So can you talk about that one?
Yeah, that one's all closed up. That one's done. I had my final court. My county does a coroner's inquest, which is weird. Like kind of like a final on this day you did okay kind of thing. So I had that a couple months ago. So yeah, it's on the internet too. But basically typical DV call. We get called to DV, the reporting party stating that her husband or son's father is at the door trying to kick in the door with a gun. And, you know, these days everyone says somebody has a gun. And to be honest with you,
it gets you guys there faster.
It does. Mm-hmm. But in fairness, everybody is carrying a gun these days. We've quadrupled the guns pulling off the street this year. My department has done a killer job. There's some go-getters at my department. They've done a killer job this year getting guns off the street. But now we got a second reporting party and she's saying, hey, my neighbor, there's some guy with a gun trying to kick in the door.
All right. So
now it's like, oh, okay, this is legit, right? So we get there and we're a couple officers deep and he's on the staircase at the bottom of the staircase and she's got an upstairs apartment. So my partner tries to talk to him a little bit. My sergeant just happened to be there, which they generally show up later because they're coming from somewhere else, and a couple other officers. And this guy starts beelining up the stairs. He's got his hands in his pockets. He's not really talking to us, but we know that's her apartment and we know he's possibly armed. So of course we follow up the staircase. As we're coming up the staircase.
This is a bad situation.
It is.
You guys are at the bottom. He's at the top.
Well, staircases and hallways, right? Like CQB 101. That's like where you don't want to be, right? Yeah. Staircases on certain calls still to this day. I'm like, here we go. Staircase.
And this isn't with your team. This is with the guys.
This is on patrol. This is like my second call of the night. Cleared briefing, went to a 5150 and actually cleared that call very quickly to go to this one. So at this point, he's backtracking up the stairs. He kind of turns and I'm just behind the primary shooting officer and officer with less lethal. And I see him drawing.
So you're number 3 guy.
The number 3 guy, but we're kind of staggered. So I'm like number 2-ish, like where me and number 2 are like shoulder to shoulder.
Okay.
And I actually see the gun start to come out. And if you watch my video, they don't depict it in the video my department put out. But if you pause it, you can see the gun on my body camera. I saw it.
Oh, what you're saying is they didn't do the edit, but they didn't
do the circle. They did it for the primary shooting officer. But if you look at mine, you can see the gun.
I gotcha. From different camera angles.
Correct.
I'm with you. Okay.
They showed my camera angle, but they didn't like slow it down and depict like circle the gun.
You saw, yeah.
So I start to say something. I forget what I was going to say, but you hear me start to talk and then shots ring out. And it's
that fast.
That fast. I kind of lost sight of some people as they're moving around because it's like a, what do I call it? Like a platform.
Like a mezzanine up top.
Yeah, there's apartments left and right. There's, I think, 4 apartments total, 2 on one side, 2 on the other. So I hear the shots, I hear boom. And what I thought was boom, boom, boom. So my mind, it's crazy how fast your brain processes stuff because my brain instantly went to this dude shot at my partner who is like my little brother, right? I've been with him through thick and thin. Mind you, his wife is the dispatcher.
Wow. It's a tight family.
Yeah. And so I'm thinking this dude just shot at my partner and he shot back. Boom, boom.
Right. So the first boom was coming from the suspect and the second
that's what my brain picked up. What actually happened is my partner shot all 3 shots.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So this guy was high as a kite. He had everything in his system. Right. So I think that had to deal with the fact that he was trying to shoot at us, but probably couldn't due to his mental.
Because he got it out. He got it out.
But my partner shot. And so I think we were going upstairs. So I don't remember if I kind of flinched or if I slipped on a stair.
Like in mid step somewhere.
There's a surveillance camera from the apartment complex and you can see me kind of drop down 1 step as the shots ring out. But my mind, I'm like, go get him, right? Like that's my boy. Like I'm not going to leave him up there. So I start going up the stairs and as I'm going up it, he goes flat on the stairs.
The suspect or your partner?
My partner.
Oh boy.
So we talked about that hallway, right? That hallway staircase, CQB is the worst place to be, right?
Yeah, well, you're on no man's land right now.
Kudos to my partner. He was smart enough that the only place I can get cover
is down.
Well, he had a malfunction. I didn't know that. He had a malfunction off after his 3rd shot. So he smartly lays down on the staircase to try to fix it. But in my mind, watching him out of the corner of my eye,
I thought he was dead.
I thought he was shot.
Yeah. Okay.
I'm like, holy crap, this is it. This is every cop's worst nightmare. Mm-hmm. My friend and partner is shot. And I'll try not to get choked up right now, but I still tell him to this day, every time I think about it, I relive that feeling of that he was shot, you know?
I can't believe this.
That is like, there's no other way to put it. It's a shitty feeling. It is the worst. Right. So at this point, I still can't really see the suspect because I was also using the staircase to my advantage. Right.
The best you can. Yeah.
I start slowly cresting it up stair by stair. And in my mind, I was two-handed. I mean, like, right. Like you do at the range, right? Two-handed, everything's
Side
there.
Picture,
everything was perfect. Right. Well, somebody later, one of my buddies, the next morning after everything goes down, he goes, dude, that was one-handed on a staircase, dude. And you hit him. And I'm like, what? No, dude, I had two hands on the gun. And he's like, no, dude, you had one hand on the gun.
Wow, this is fascinating to me that, I mean, this is because, I mean, what are we talking about? It's just
seconds.
5 seconds.
And what's a trip is there's so much that I remember like clear as day and stuff that's like, oh yeah, that did happen, you know? And so what ended up happening is because I'm going up the stairs, I felt unbalanced and I grabbed the handrail with my left hand.
Which left you one-handed.
It left me one-handed. And as I crest up, he's still moving. And again, clear as day, like my mind just goes right onto the barrel and the gun's pointed at me. I can clearly see his fingers inside the trigger guard. I see building and a little backdrop. There's like a sliver of no building. And I'm like,
here we go.
He's moving. It's pointing at me. Threat. Boom, boom. Actually, it was pretty precise because I knew I was shooting one-handed. And so I shot one and I'm pretty sure that one, I'd have to go back and look at all that, but I'm pretty sure that one skipped the deck of the platform there and it missed. And then my second one went up into his leg, like right up in the guts where you want to get everything. But one of my partner shots, believe it or not, actually went through and clipped his heart. So he was bleeding out internally already. So,
but he's still going.
He was still going,
which is an important thing. I think we can talk about that later. Actually,
he kept going. And so at that point, and this is all happening rapidly. My partner says malfunction. He's going to get out of there. So I say go. We basically do a quick bound. He goes down. I cover. The dude's like basically stopping to move, but he's still got the gun pointed at us. I go into OODA loop. The only moment of this whole thing that I wish I didn't do is I just totally went into OODA loop mood going down the stairs because I was afraid for the rest of my officers. And I just kept repeating, he's still got the gun pointed at us. because I didn't want anybody else to rush up there.
To walk into the emotion.
And the other thing was when we got down there, so now I'm pointing, I'm covering right on the staircase and we're starting to start communication with him and all that. But my partner, he's running around like a chicken with his head cut off. Not like bad, but he's like trying to work, right? He's like trying to get trying
to clear his gun.
Well, he clears his gun.
Okay.
Then he tries to get the shield out of the sergeant's car. Like he's doing what he's trained to do. Right?
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
But with my combat medic training, and I've seen it, people get hit and don't know they're hit.
Right.
Like when it's fight or flight and you're fighting, you're going to fight. And if it's not like life altering, you could go quite a time in a fight and realize, oh, I'm hit somewhere like not important. Like I'm not bleeding out arterially, but I'm hit.
And this goes back to you thinking he got shot once and then put two on this guy.
Correct. So
because you don't know.
This is still where my mind's at. Right. So I start hollering at other officers, like stop him in his tracks, stand him still,
check him,
and top to bottom check him. Right. And so we check him. He's good. At that point, and it's crazy things you think about because this is all very fast. I think I even thought about this before I got somebody to check him, but I thought about doing a tack load, right? Training. Like, okay, yeah, right. I was in a gunfight. There's a lull in the gunfight. I'm going to tack load. And my brain went, no, dude, you fired twice. I run extended. So it's 19 plus 1. I'm like, you got 18 rounds, dude. Like,
you're good.
And so I think in my body camera, you even see me go like this to reach down on my exterior carrier to do a tack reload. And I'm like, no, like you're good. Right. So it's crazy what's processing and what your brain goes back to, right? Like what is your brain referred to?
Yeah. So they always say it defaults to your lowest level of training.
Yes. 100%. Right?
So, man, I mean, that's intense. I mean, so we haven't even finished yet. So he goes back downstairs. He's looking for the shield. You're yelling, hey, stop that guy.
Yep.
Stop him. Let's make sure we check him out. Guy up top is now bleeding out because he's been hitting the heart, but you don't know that.
He's been hitting the heart by my partner, hitting the leg. It went up into some guts up in his inner thigh.
So, okay. So there was a third officer on the stairs. You guys have both kind of backed off.
Yeah.
Now.
So the third officer and the sergeant, as soon as shots ran out, they came down to get a position of advantage. Like I said, I was literally just going up there because I wasn't going to leave him. Like if I'm going down, he's going with me. Yeah. So at this point, things kind of calmed down a little bit. I'm trying to do communication. You talked about all the jobs I've done before SWAT. I was on the crisis negotiations team. Everyone knows I'm a talker, so that was a good position for me. But went to FBI school for that. For CNT.
Shit!
Yeah, it was 40-hour FBI course for that. It was cool. So my sergeant comes over, great sergeant, right? And he comes over and he taps me, and he just tells me like, I forget what he whispers now, but something like CNT or I need you. Like he basically told me like, I need you to flip the switch. And like, I took a deep breath and like, you can tell in my voice, I went from like, oh shit to, and like literally after that, he ends up the primary shooter, my partner, he gets sequestered, which is normally the case. Well, at this point, I'm knee deep in trying to negotiate with this guy. So kind of outside the norm. I spent like, I think the next 20 minutes negotiating with this guy because of my experience, right? I'm crisis intervention trained. I'm CNT trained as a negotiator.
Meanwhile, he's bleeding out.
So, well, we made attempts to go up the stairs, right? We went up the stairs and, you know, I'd said everything in the book, you know, I talked to this guy like he's my friend. That's the way I look at it when I'm negotiating, right? Like I'm talking to it like it's you, dude, like it's Scott, and I want Scott to get out of this and not get hurt. So I'm pleading with him like, hey dude, I'm a medic. I'll give you aid. We'll get you to our trauma 1 center. They save everybody. They're going to save your life. Just please don't do this. No one wants to hurt you. Everything. And I meant it. Like I honestly meant it. Like people say, oh, that's all talk. That's all. No, I meant it. I don't want to see this man die, and I don't want to have a hand in this man dying. Like I want him to live. And so did that for about 20 minutes. Finally, I get pulled away. They go to less lethal, get no reaction. And so they go in, they handcuff him, all that, search him, recover the gun. His finger was still in the trigger guard. So they had to pin him with the shield and be very careful getting that gun out. And then obviously at this point, paramedics have been just itching to get in there. So as soon as they go code 4 and it's all clear, they rush up there. He did not make it. And so at that point we just went into protocol, you know, get sequestered, which by the way, that is extremely stressful. Probably like the most stressful experience of my career.
Can't imagine, man.
I know I did right. I know I did what I had to do, but in this day and age, being a cop, shooting anybody is like, okay, am I going to be on the media? Am I going to, you know what I mean? Like, how is this going to be portrayed? Right?
Oh man. I'm just trying to process it all myself. And that's a pretty compelling story. And I'm just thinking about from start to finish, all the things you might hear, like as a civilian, about all the bad things that police officers have to deal with out there on a daily basis. And oftentimes we don't even hear about it. So first off, it starts off as what to my knowledge is one of the most dangerous situations you guys can walk into, which is a domestic violence call. Yep. Right. Yep. So it starts there. Number 2, we have 2 witnesses that say the guy's got a gun. So that's obviously a big problem. Yeah. That's exacerbated by the dude's all jacked up on whatever he's jacked up on, right? From a narcotics perspective or whatever. And you don't know this. We have a staircase, we have a platform, we have hallways at the top, and ultimately there's shooting. So, and within that, you've got a malfunction of a weapon, right? And all the confusion that happens there. And then now stress on stress on stress on stress. Yeah. On top of all that, man. I mean, that is, you talk about how your brain sort of deals with all that in the moment. Was there a point where you kind of stepped back from all that after the negotiation, after he's been, you know, kind of scooped up and carted away and whatever, and you guys get sequestered? How long before it kind of hits you, and what does that feel like?
I think once I got sequestered, it hit me. You know, a different sergeant had showed up. Luckily, we had some specialty stuff going on that night, so there was more officers and an additional sergeant there that normally aren't there. So we had a lot of resources, and so I know this sergeant, and you know, we're like a family. So he knows me. He knows my now wife. So the first thing I said is call her, because I don't want her to get the call from somebody else. Because the word travels and people mean well, right? But I don't want her to get the call. Yeah, from I can't imagine somebody, being on that, you know. Yeah. So I said, call her, stand right in front of me and do it. I know I can't talk to her. He's like, put in the number, no hesitation, calls her, talks to her, lets her know what's going on. And I think that's where it hit me. I'm like, oh crap, this is her worst nightmare too. Like she's at home in bed and she's getting that phone call, right? So I think that's the first time it really hit me. We're making my wife cry over there, by the way. She's in the studio and she's over there crying. So I'm not going to look over there because then I'll cry. But she got that call. And I think that's when it really hit me like, oh man, like this is her worst nightmare too. You know, people don't realize it's really hard being with a cop, a firefighter, any first responder. And so I think that's where it really hit me. But then I jumped right back into worry mode because now I got to go. I can't talk to anybody about it, right? When you're being sequestered, you can't talk to anybody about it. You can talk. I mean, we could talk about the football game on Sunday. We could talk about what we're going to do this weekend, but we can't talk about the event. And all you want to do, you just want to talk about it. Like, right. It's like this weight and you just want to, but you can't because
it's also your family, right?
Right. Well, I got to, at some point, one of the captains came in and he's like, hey, have you called your family? And I said, no. And he says, okay, here, call your family, you know, because again, somebody always has to make sure you're not talking about the event. So called my mom again, woke her up in the middle of the night. Hey, mom. Hey, you don't sound right. She could hear in my voice. I'm okay.
Then you have to relive the whole thing all over again.
Oh, I relived it every second, even if I wasn't talking about it that night. So I tell her, hey, I'm fine, you know, but I was involved. There was a shooting. I was a shooter. I am okay. And I'm going to be sequestered. It's going to be a long night and I'll call you on my way home tomorrow. It'll probably be in the morning. Cause mind you, this is like 9, 10 o'clock at night.
Right. I
already know I'm going to get out 7, 8 o'clock the next morning. So, you know, it was hard, but it's just, like I said, you want to talk about it, right? That natural human emotion is to talk about it, right? Like good or bad, like you share things with other human beings, right? So that was really hard.
It's one of the few things we have as humans that separate us.
Right.
You know, it's having those conversations.
And you want somebody to tell you, hey,
it's okay.
You're okay. You did the right thing. You know, especially like your senior officers or people you look up to, you see them walking around because they're investigating this, right? Like one of the detectives that came to investigate mine is one of my good friends. You know, I was in his wedding. He was just in my wedding and I'm looking at him and I'm looking at my other buddy who we hang out outside of work and I'm looking at them and they're looking at me and they know I'm tripping, right? Like
so that's the whole thing here. Like, so now you're being processed and you're having to process and now other people are having to process that too. You know, they're having to process. So you're looking at them having these conversations and man, if I'm having that conversation with you, I don't care how well I know you, I'm walking on eggshells right now. Like, just like, dude, is Greg okay? Like,
but you can't,
because I know I'm not really okay.
Yeah. You can say like, I'm okay. Right. But it's like, you want more than that. You want to tell them what happened and then be like, yeah, dude, you did the right thing.
But you can't.
So that was hard. And of course, you know, they process you. It's funny you said the word process because the other hard thing for me in all this is they photograph you. Right. And so they photographed me as I was, right. Left, right, turn around. And I remember getting really upset because I felt like a criminal. Like I did something wrong.
Through mugshots.
Oh, dude, they took my gun out. Of course, they count your rounds. They take pictures of your firearm. They take your firearm, you know, and this
is not something you could prepare for.
No, not at all. And, you know, my department does a really good job preparing us. So that's probably why I did so well with it, but it's still hard. Right. And I looked over we have a peer support team, looked over at one of my peer support people. And I look up to her. She's been in a department a long time. She does a lot of good stuff for our department. And I look over at her and she goes, are you okay? I said, no. She said, why? I said, I feel like a criminal right now. And I do not like I was getting angry. Like I was pissed off.
Seems very natural.
It was a range of emotions, man. There's times where I thought I was going to cry and I'm not a big crier. I thought I was going to cry. There was times where I thought, you know, I was angry. There's times where I was scared. I'll be honest. I was scared. Like I said, am I going to end up in the news? How's this going to work out? But long story short, we finally were the last two to get interviewed. I'm the last one. I think I finished my interview at like 7:30 in the morning. So now I've been up all night, right? Nerves, stomach's turning, couldn't even eat kind of thing. And then I go home and I try to sleep and can't. I think we sat in bed until.
How could you? I mean, I guess I could see you like just like falling face first onto the couch and like
the problem
just being exhausted.
For me, I was past that point, right? So
well, you got adrenaline and cortisol running through you like crazy right now, so that's keeping you up,
right? But some people do, and some people go back to a hotel room or something while they're being sequestered and they sleep before they get interviewed, you know. But for me, I was like anxious, you know, so I wasn't going to sleep. So we talked till about 11 in the morning or so. And I think I slept maybe a handful of hours that day. And then I started fielding calls. I wanted to reach out to the homies. I got a good tribe. I got a good village and they take care of me. So People were coming by the house. People were sending DoorDash gift cards. You know, our community is outstanding. And so I started fielding calls and just kind of like trying to get normal. My department does a good job with mental health. So you automatically get a week, but me and my partner both ended up taking a second week, just so that we had time to go talk to our department therapist, which they have. I mentioned the peer support. My department is very ahead of that. Luckily, a sergeant before my time, I got to work for him before he retired, but him and some other people put together our peer support team. Beth, I can't think of Beth's last name right now. But Beth has her office, here in the Bay Area. And if you're a cop listening to this and you probably know the name Beth, she's awesome. We go and see her. She's amazing.
So you just said something there that strikes me, and that is the try to get normal after having gone through what you went through, trying to get normal. I can't remember where I heard this. I can't remember, but I think it was a documentary on combat veterans that had come back and then were seeking help for mental and emotional help. And I think what the therapist was saying is this is your normal now. And now you need to figure out how to deal with what the new normal is. Yeah. It's never going to be the same ever again after having gone through what you've gone through. Right. So, you were just sort of talking about the process of seeing and getting some help and getting some people on your team and all of the things, like all of the people, right? Like, so the people that you work with, the family that's around you, right? Your wife, fiance at the time, but your wife, the counselors, right? And then there's a department that puts you in, there's a middle person for all this stuff, and they're taking a village or a team to do this. Is there a book? Like, how does that outlines how all this should work? Like, or is it just figuring it out as you go?
There is a book. I forget the exact name of it, and I should know. It's, I'll get it to you and you can link it in here or whatever, but it's basically Surviving Law Enforcement. It's a white and red book. And if you're in law enforcement, you probably saw it at your academy, but it's not just for you. It's for your spouses and your family too.
Dude, I was actually being like, almost sarcastic in asking that question, but this literally is a thing.
Literally somebody wrote a book about how to survive a career in law enforcement. And then, like I said, luckily the stigma, right, with people like Greg and Jesse, my good friends over at the Overwatch, and all these other places, is the stigma around men's mental health is going away. And I think I told you, we've talked about before, I was like that dude that was like, I ain't ever going to a therapist. Like, nah, dude, that ain't me. Right. But that stigma's gone away and there's things in place. And I'm fortunate, right? Like, to those listening, I'm not a combat veteran, but our combat veterans, why they're so broken is they didn't get the opportunity I did, right? Like, I had a traumatic incident. I got like 2 weeks off of work to deal with it. You
have to go back to work the next day.
I went and talked to a therapist. Like, I got that time to process. These dudes don't get the time, right? They go right back out that night, or maybe they're still in it. You know what I mean? For that amount of time. And when your brain doesn't get that time to process,
you can't just put it in a box and put it on a shelf.
It's a part of me, but I'm good, right? Like, I mean that. Like, I tell people all the time, like, I got taken care of. I'm good, right? I go back to work, good, right? But I can only imagine if I had to relive that night after night for weeks, months on end, and not get the opportunity to deal with that. Like, to my veterans listening,
I get this.
I give them all the kudos. That's what I'm getting at, man. Because people don't give them enough respect, in my opinion. It's just not enough. There's never enough we can do for them, ever.
In After Dark episode number 35, I sat down with Canine Officer Chris Howe. And in this episode, we talk about how they actually use a drone as part of as a negotiation with a character that had backed himself into a corner. This is kind of an interesting story to me, just because this is stuff that we don't typically hear. It was interesting to hear all the antics that they had to go through in order to ultimately end this or find a resolution to this particular situation, including the use of a drone. Listen in.
We had one a few years ago. This guy, high out of his mind, had a pretty nasty history. He had actually Several years prior to this, had actually shot a San Jose police officer. That officer thankfully lived through that shooting.
Okay.
But this guy, career criminal, bad dude. He does a home invasion robbery in our city. The people are obviously calling 911. He's breaking into our house. He takes off running, and he finds a hotel that's under construction that's probably between a quarter mile, half mile away. And he works his way all the way up to the roof. And somehow the officers figure out that he's up there. So I'm actually off that day. I'm not even working right now. And so the officers that are first on scene are trying to communicate with him. Well, he's 8 stories up in the air, and he's 10 shades of pissed off. And there's construction tools and equipment and everything up there. And he decides it's a great idea. I'm just going to start throwing stuff off. Right? Throwing hammers at the cop cars and having himself a fun day. So that turns into a full-blown call out for us. So I come in from home with the rest of my team, and we start trying to communicate with him. They end up using a drone and flying a cell phone up to the top because, like I said, it was probably like 8 stories up. Right?
Wait. Okay, hold on. Let's talk about this. So you guys got tools like drones and stuff. I never even thought about this either. I mean, the different types of technology that are available to you. This is fascinating. Flying a cell phone up top. Because back in the day, I mean, I watched all the cop shows when I was a kid. They had the bag phone, right? And they'd throw it into the room or whatever else. Or miraculously in the movies, they always have the bad guy's phone number. The bad guy always has the direct line to, Al Pacino, who's the negotiator outside, right? Like that's not the reality. We drone flight in cell phones. Okay, sorry. I got to say, my head around that.
It was a first for us too. I don't think we'd ever had to deploy a phone that way before.
Wow. Okay. All right. So guy gets phone.
I mean, the alternative was we had a patrol car on the ground. We're trying to use the PA speaker, and then how can you hear that?
You can't hear him. Yeah.
Right. So so they use a drone. They get a cell phone up to him. So now we can at least talk. So a couple of the guys get on the phone. They start negotiating with him, and like I said, he's just high out of his mind. And so, how do you really negotiate with somebody like that? I mean, we've all been at the bar with our drunk friends. You can't even negotiate with people right? Yeah. So
it's time to go, man.
So this is hours long, and he wants cigarettes, and he wants food, and he wants all this stuff, right? And so they start trying to get him some things, but we at the same time are working our way up the building, and we're at the roof hatch right below where he's at. And it starts getting to a point where obviously the negotiation over the phone is not working. But
you're stalling.
We're stalling. We're trying to get him to do the right thing, but he's not wanting to. So eventually we got to go up there. Eventually something's got to come to a resolution.
The push is going to come to shove, yeah.
Right. And the fear of going up there is, like you said, push comes to shove, right? Nobody wants to get into a fight on a roof and get thrown off of a roof.
There's power tools and shit up there still.
Right. It's not the best of environments. But so we take a team up there. When we get up there, he ends up getting rid of the cell phone that with the negotiator he had been talking to for hours, which really kind of didn't bode too well with us because now we're having to create a whole new rapport with him and he doesn't know who we are.
Starting over.
Right. But now he's afraid because there's, 8 or 10 cops up on the roof that are challenging him. So now, does he want to talk now? So that we had to build that back up. We had to, I've never had to throw a burrito at somebody to try to get them to want to talk with me. They were throwing,
the guy wants food, so you can have the food, but no, dude, I have your food. You got to talk to me.
Yeah, come closer. So,
Lord.
Yeah, so this went on for hours. He's threatening to jump. We're worried about, getting into a physical altercation with him a little bit on top of the roof because none of us want to end up falling off, But ultimately, we had a good resolution. We didn't have to use any kind of force with him. It took me talking him into a burrito and giving him a pack of cigarettes that only had 3 cigarettes in it. I said, you can smoke these 3 and then it's time to be done and go down.
Wow.
And it worked itself out. He ended up giving up to us, let us put him in handcuffs. We didn't have to fight with him. We didn't have to use any force. And it resolved itself. But that took a massive amount of resources, took a lot of cops, took a lot of hours. And I would say that in the end, 100% worth it. No one got hurt. No one died. That's a win. And that's what we always look for.
In After Dark episode number 52, I sat down with Joe Dawson. That was my first experience with Joe in Las Vegas, Nevada at SHOT Show 2023. In this particular clip, I get into it with Joe a little bit about his feelings and his thoughts about the dichotomy that exists within the special operations community, specific to notoriety, how people take credit, and how they handle themselves outside of the role that they played in the past within that community.
Why did you make it, man? Like,
Dude.
sounds like sort of an against all odds type of thing. Like,
No, I don't want to sound
look, you didn't say that. I said that. So that, to be fair,
it was.
I'm just,
I had a chip on my shoulder and something to prove.
Mhm.
I finally felt like I'd grown into something. I wanted to prove to myself as much as anybody else that like I could do something that, and not be awkward, not fail at it, not whatever. And, standing next to guys, there was Olympic trials athletes, dudes who were vastly, you're all A-type, chest beating personality.
athletes, yeah. Like,
Those 400 dudes are selected from, there might be 3,000 who take the screening test, and the 400 that start are the best of those. And then of those dudes, like, again, 20 make it. But also I was watching people that I viewed as more talented, faster, better swimmers, whatever, more jacked, had a better six pack, whatever, than I was. And I was still there. Like I hadn't quit yet. And I was still sitting next to another dude. Like, you're sitting there shaking in the water. And it's like, I'm still sitting next to another dude. He hasn't quit.
Mhm.
And so these are the dudes I want to be next. I guess that guy's not one of them. Like, these are the dudes I want to be next. I guess that guy's not one of them. Like, and and by the time you get down to those final dudes, you're like, okay, these dudes are my brothers. And so you stay. And it's, and it drove me more than anything. People ask me like, would you ever come close to quitting? I actually broke my back at Fort Benning and got rolled a couple classes. And there happened to be a big gap in classes, so there's nobody to roll into. And so I sat kind of like in this administrative hold. I got more depressed doing that than I ever did like sitting on a pier wet or rolling around in the sand. It was just like, God, let me start again.
Right.
But no, because it was like, I just, and they always just tell us it's like, every evolution will end.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like, I never looked at it as a whole. And I think maybe it's a personality thing, because I've since done stuff where I'm like, if you look at the entirety of what you have to accomplish, it's super overwhelming. But if you take, how do you eat an elephant one bite at a time?
Mm-hmm.
It's like, if you take one bite and you go, hey, I just need to get through this swim. Okay, you got through the swim. That wasn't that bad. Okay, I'm just going to get to lunch. Okay, you're eating lunch. You're like, okay, I'm still here. Like, okay, I'm just going to get to dinner. It's like, oh, this night's really long. Hell week's really long. It's like, oh, and then it's over. You're like, oh, dude, there's nothing else you can throw at me now. Like, every event will end.
Mm-hmm.
And then you just kind of take that and you go, okay, cool. What's next? What's next?
Yeah, it's a mindset thing. There's a physical and mental toughness piece. Obviously, there's a lot of things I think that go into that, but it is simplifying it like that.
Yeah.
And taking something that ultimately is very complex and very complicated over time, but really simplifying it and taking it down. And like the PRS stuff to me is almost very intimidating. When I look at it, I don't know a ton about it. I've done some, but very little. And you if you decide to go take classes or go do stuff, in that realm, that is a much different type of shooting, much different type of, I think, cerebral process than going out on the pistol range and learning pistol.
Oh yeah, 100%.
Learning pistol. I wonder, because that's I said this, earlier, it's like that's the PRS stuff is your jam. You spend a lot of time doing that. You do the pistol stuff too. But like for the users out there like me that are listening, what do they need to know before they get into that? Like you mentioned the why, and I get that. So for me right now, it's not, and you also mentioned it, sometimes it's not very well developed. I could liken this to like the fitness business. People like, I need to join the gym and I need to lose weight. Okay, cool. That's a great goal. Why? Why is that important for you? Because that's going to ultimately drive decision-making and mindset and behavior change and all that other stuff. What do people like me need to know, like coming into that, like making a decision to go take PRS? Because for right now, to me, first off, I love the idea of the cerebralness behind it and really having to work through a process. You do that on the pistol range too. You do that with the carbine, as well. But like on the shorter ranges. But I look at it and I'm like, this just looks like a really cool skill. It's a very cool skill to learn.
It's definitely a math and problem solving drill more than it is a physical skill.
Okay.
So that's why
so you need to know that.
One of the best precision rifle shooters in the country right now is a 15-year-old girl. And it's not a physical thing. She shoots a big heavy rifle but she's one of the best in the country. It's a mental thing and it's a problem solving thing. Because it's not a time-based scoring event. It's reading environmentals, it's making corrections, it's making sure that your dope's right. It's I have to shoot off of this really unstable thing and try to make a really stable shot on a really small target far away. And if I miss, I have to be able to see where I missed and make correction and or move to another position and do the exact same thing, rinse and repeat.
That through all the variables.
It's kind of like, golf without the crazy pants. And you carry a big stick that shoots really far. It is. It's like, hey, I'm trying to solve this problem. I'm trying to get to the green. I've got, hey, you have to hit these 4 targets in 60 seconds off this ladder, and you only can use X, Y, or Z. Okay, go. It's like, well, the distances are this. Well, what happens when you miss? What happens when you're not stable? How do you stabilize the gun so your reticle is, bouncing all over the place? It's a problem-solving thing of maybe this person did it, but they're taller than you, they're shorter than you, their gun's heavier than you, it sits on the barricade better. Like how they're doing it might not work for you. It's like, oh, the wind picked up, it fell off. Like there's environmental factors that have to come into play. It's a huge puzzle that you have to solve under time at one given. Okay, you ready? You understand the course of fire? Here you go. Go. And then you're graded. And then over 2 days, it's added up, and it has a competitive nature to it, a problem-solving nature. It's not as physical. It's not. It's much more cerebral. It's much more math-based. It's much more your ability to kind of solve problems and build structure. And there are some physical aspects of it. I mean, you have to move a rifle in and out of ports and around barricades and stuff. But the fitness and speed of running around a USPSA match or a multi-gun match is much more physical.
Yeah, but what I hear you saying is basically the same way you approach buds. It's like one little piece at a time, and understanding like, well, I got to get to lunch. And then when I get to lunch, I got to figure out how I'm going to get to dinner. And so it's the same process every time though.
Well, yeah, it's like all these things have to happen for you to get through that stage. Dude, my dope has to be good. My wing calls have to be good. My position has to be stable. Like I have to make the right corrections, adjust my dope, and do it all under stress. It's like, that's the same thing with buds. It's like, and the thing is that a lot of guys quit because they've never failed before.
I was just going to say this. So this is this is a pass fail.
Yeah.
Like there's no in between. There's no feel good. It's not like horseshoes, right?
You're shooting against yourself.
Yeah.
You're only going to shoot as fast as you can shoot.
Right.
And so you're not shooting they have some shoot offs every once in a while, but like the event is individually scored and there's nobody shooting at the same time as you. Like you're not racing somebody on the next rock to shoot and then the winner goes on.
Right. It's
like it's individually scored. And so I focus that on like, I'm only going to shoot as fast as I can shoot. Like, it doesn't matter if somebody came up and shot before me. Like what is that impact does that have on me at all?
None.
Like of course I want to clean the whole stage. I want to shoot it and get all my points, but I have to do my job to get that
first. Yeah.
It's like running the 4 mile, if there's somebody who was an all-American runner from Arizona and I played, defensive end at junior college, like, dude, I'm sorry. I'm a big dude. That guy's a runner. I can only run as hard as I can run.
Yeah,
that guy's a gazelle and he's 165 pounds. Mm-hmm. And so I just went, all I can do is the best that I can do. And if that's not good enough, then then I can live with that. Mm-hmm. But nobody else is going to dictate that. And the competition to pass, the competition to win, the competition to make it through buds, the competition to succeed is myself. Because at the end of the day, I'm the only one who has any effect on that. Nobody else does.
Yeah, I think the way you explain it sounds so simple, right? But to be getting inside the mindset and understanding and not having ever lost anything before, or quite frankly, ever had to compete anymore, or ever been given the honest feedback of whether it's the ting or where that shot placement is on the target, or that you suck. You're just not as good as you think. I
tell people, I said, long range shooting is really, really easy. I can give you the 100% keys to doing it in 3 steps. I said, have perfect dope, have perfect wind, apply all your fundamentals, you'll hit 100% of your shots.
So easy.
Yeah, it's 3 things.
So easy. I mean, I think that's a good way to look at it just in terms of applying it to life. And I see the precision rifle stuff as a really good lesson, like a life lesson to have to really be able, you mentioned golf. It is a little bit like you have to get outside of your own head. You really have to think about things. It's not something you just show up and do. Like I can play golf.
right? I don't play golf well, right? In order to do that, I got to get lots of reps, and I have to go through these processes and get outside of my own head, because as soon as something else sneaks in there, or I'm not accounting for something, like obviously bad things can happen.
You made a good point. So, getting out of your comfort zone. I get asked all the time, like, hey, I want to start PRS. What do I need to start? I go, dude, a rifle, a sling, a bipod, a rear bag, and a ballistic app or a scope. You know, a rifle with a scope, sling, bipod, rear bag, and a ballistic app. Like, that's it, man. Like, go shoot a match. They go, well, what caliber? Do I need a 6BR? Do I need a 6 Creed? Do I need a this? Do I need a this? Like, dude, 308 with a detachable mag, go shoot a match. And they go, but I won't be competitive. I said, dude, you're just starting. I'm going to tell you a secret, man. You're not going to be competitive.
Yeah.
Like,
here's the truth.
Go and learn. Like, right. I haven't shot a match in 4 years through working at Siemens and doing all these things. I haven't shot a match. I used to be fairly adept at matches. I finished okay. Like, I haven't shot a match in 4 years. I'm going back and shooting a match this year with a 308. I'm going, because I was like, I just want to get back into the problem solving, back into the routines. A 308 makes me be better at wind calling. Like, I will be a better shooter at the end of the season, because I'm only going to shoot as good as I can shoot. And I don't want to, I'm going for the learning ability, the relevance, to getting back into the swing of things, to continue to improve as a shooter. And the way I'm going to improve as a shooter is shooting something that makes me work a little harder. And then when I feel like, okay, I'm getting back in my groove, then I'll bust my match gun back out of the safe. Mm-hmm. Like, it's like, I'm gonna grab that tool that makes me work a little harder so that I become a better shooter. And then when I'm like, okay, like I'm starting to groove, then I'll bring out the better tool that's the easier paintbrush to paint with. And then I'll really start trying to go make a run at it.
That's such the opposite of the way people are approaching this whole thing anyways, man. They want to, like, give me the cool shit, give me the fast stuff, give me the high-speed gear. I want the stuff that looks cool. I want the stuff that everybody else is shooting or whatever else. Let's take the other road here, man. Grab the stuff that makes you work a little harder, right? And you can build into, again, another kind of lesson in life, right? Like, you have to do the fucking work. You got to do the work. So if you're coming to take, lessons or sessions or whatever. In After Dark, I sat down with retired canine officer Nick McCarthy. In this clip, he kind of goes through a incident that he went through that kind of sets the stage for the story that made this episode the most popular episode ever downloaded on Iron Sights. It's had literally millions of downloads as a result. It talks about an incident where things just went kind of from bad to worse. If you haven't listened to Nick McCarthy, I encourage you to go back and listen. It's a lengthy one, but there's a lot in there.
There was a few things in my career that I was involved in that, it was fucked up. I mean, there's stuff that stuck with me that I didn't necessarily even feel that stuck with me. And I got 2017, I was involved in a critical incident, and it was a in custody death. So we were fighting this dude, knockout, drag out. Dude's been up probably a week on meth, and 3 cops, and the other 2 much bigger, much better shape, prior military guys, and we were behind on this. Like, this dude was fighting all 3 of us in this living room in this house. And kind of a weird note, there was a gallon of milk on the mantle right above the fireplace.
Okay, weird place to store your milk.
Right, weird place to store your milk. So he throws me up against the fireplace. And dude, the gallon of milk's open and it falls, and it's like drenched me in milk. The milk's all over the floor, hardwood floor. We're slipping in it. It's nasty, dude.
When shit goes bad, it goes
bad. And this dude hadn't bathed himself in like a month. So it was like, throw that on top of milk and fighting this dude. It was a good one, So we're fighting, and I got his right arm, and we're trying to put him in handcuffs, and he's just, dude, he's wrong. No, not at all. So my buddy tased him. You're going to get tased. And excited delirium hits, and he dies.
Wow.
So it's my first real incident that I've been involved in where someone passes away, right? And now I get my first kind of look into what happens after that, kind of internally within the police department. And so we're all sequestered.
Yeah, which is the first thing that happens, right? When these things happen, you go to cars, rooms, whatever, not supposed to talk to anybody or have any conversation about this incident at all until the investigator gets there.
And it's a hard It's a hard thing.
You're alone.
You know, you're either, I had somebody with me, but it was like, you know, we're talking about the Giants game, dude. And I'm like, dude, we're talking about the Giants game. Like the media is going to get hold of this. It's going to be nuts. Cause at this time, the cop stuff was still there, you know, like it wasn't as bad as it is now, but I knew like, this is going to be a road, you know? And so we go through that. There's a bunch of media coverage on it. We had a little protest, you know, and the things people were saying started to affect me a little bit. Then we ended up getting sued, and we're dealing with that for a year. And then that dissipated, right? Then that's gone. And there was other incidents that happened before that, that I obviously prepared myself for it, right? But didn't prepare myself for what was going to happen after. You know, I fought this dude with a gun, and he's got it in his windbreaker jacket. He's not wearing a shirt, and it's open. I have him on the hood of the car, and I'm holding him down, and I got my left hand on the revolver. He's trying to pull it out. And I'm like, you know, I'm running out of options on what I can do here. So I pull my gun out. I point it literally at his face. I'm like, dude, if you pull the gun out, I'm going to shoot you. Like, it's that simple, dude. Just stone cold look, dude. Didn't blink, didn't care. And I remember I had to transition and put my elbow on the hood of the car. Now I have my gun kind of to the side of him. And I'm like, dude, I got no room to really fuck around with you right now. Like, this is happening. Well, the initial officer who was searching him, that this dude took off running from, he's running towards us to help me, you know? Well, he trips and falls, and he ends up screwing up his knee for like a year, like got an actual knee injury, blew his knee out. And so he trips, he falls, and his head lands right next to bad guy's head. Oh my God. Dude. So I've already made the decision to shoot him, because the gun, when I look down, I see the gun coming out. So I have a hold of it, but I'm like really only holding the barrel, like the very small barrel of this revolver. And I'm like kind of slipping a little bit. I have a good, you know, hold on it, but I'm like, dude, this is not good. So decisions made. And
by the way, this cop's on the same side of the gun, or the suspect's gun.
No, he's on the opposite side.
Okay.
So he's on the opposite side, and I've made the decision to shoot him. So I'm like, dude, my finger's on the trigger. Like I'm there. Mm-hmm. And now his head is right next to his head. All I can see is, dude, if I shoot this dude and it goes through, and I just shot my partner. And that right there will transition to the next critical incident that I talk about, because it's pretty much the same thing. Okay. So that after that.
Whoa. How did this end?
Oh, how did it end? Yeah, we should probably tell that. So once I see his head there, I'm like, nope. I holstered real quick, and I punched dude with my right hand, which kind of didn't really do much to him. It just kind of, you know, stunned him a second. And I threw his hand out of his jacket. I think he just kind of let go a little bit. A gun goes flying out on the ground, and I just dump him on the ground, put him in handcuffs, and we're done. That incident.
Wow.
Stayed with me for a little bit, right? Afterwards, I was like, that was a close call, you know?
So first off, you guys got a gun, you could have been shot. Then you have to make the decision to potentially shoot somebody. And then all of a sudden, if I shoot this guy, I'm also going to kill my partner.
Yeah. The potential.
And so now I have to go completely reverse process again.
It's just the heightened, had to bring it back down to here, and then kind of go back up to that in seconds. And then it was the conversation I had with bad guy afterwards that really, it didn't screw me up. It just kind of solidified how serious this job is. So I put him in the car, dude, and he was a ghost town gang member out of Oakland. He had a CDC warrant. He was a parolee at large. So he was on the run for a little while. That gun was used in a homicide in Oakland. It was stolen. So I put him in the car. We're driving. He's looking out the window. I'm driving back to the station.
So you don't know any of this though?
No, I know this now.
You know the rap sheet, but you don't know.
Right. So I knew he had a warrant.
You don't know about the gun yet.
I don't know about the gun. I knew about the warrant. I'm like, obviously that's why he's running. He's running. He didn't want to go back to prison. So, okay, I get that. So we're driving back, and then, you know, I look him in my rearview mirror. He's looking out the window, and drive again a little bit. I look at the mirror. He's looking straight at me, and he goes, "You're one of those young cops, huh?" I'm all, "Yeah." He goes, "Were you going to shoot me?" I go, "Yeah, I was." He goes, "Good, because I was going to shoot you too." And it just went like, all right.
Whoa.
You know what I mean? Because it solidified that I knew what he was trying to do, but he didn't use any words, right? It was just his physical actions with the gun. But then he told me straight to my eyes, like, dude, I was going to do that. I'm like, all right.
Shit's intense, man.
And then it was like, he was super cool afterwards. He was like, go ahead, bro, no problem. I'll get out of the car. Like, I'll be cool with you. And
Or seemingly anyways.
Seemingly, yeah. But these, someone's been in and out of prison probably.
They don't have a lot to lose, man. Yeah.
Yeah. So, incidents like that. There's a couple other ones, but April 7th of 21 was really the incident that kind of ended really everything for me.
So they say there's in law enforcement or even like in the fire service, everybody has like a career incident. Like there's always one, but for people that do things like you were doing, like as a canine officer, maybe you're in like in some type of a special team, that could even be in like the fire service for that matter, where you're doing like these really dangerous rescues or recovery type operations or whatever. You don't have one career incident. You can have multiple career incidents versus, average, one per person. So we're April 2017. So this is a few years ago. This was almost,
yeah, the 17 was was the in custody death critical incident. The fight in the gun was actually with the gun was actually before that, I think. If I remember, it was in there. It was similar time
before the canine officer.
Yeah.
Okay, so before you got Tyke.
Yeah,
okay.
Everything.
So this is cumulative.
Yeah, every major traumatic incident I was involved in, besides the April 7th, 21 officer involved shooting, happened with no dog. And it's funny that you touched on some fire stuff. People don't understand that. A lot of the times law enforcement gets to fires before firemen even get there. And I had an incident where house was on fire, old lady's inside, like her husband comes out, he's on fire. Like his shoes are on fire, his shirt's on fire. And I'm thinking in my head, like, my grandma, I can't let this lady burn alive. So we get there first and me and two other cops were like looking at each other like, dude, we gotta go in here, which is going to suck. Cause this whole house, the whole top floor is engulfed, but thank God the front door was already open. Cause if it hadn't been opened, I probably wouldn't have popped that door because of all that the backdraft. Yeah. And so I could see in and I could see the flames pooling on the roof, like of that second level.
It's
about to come down. So I asked her husband, I'm like, where is she? Like, what room is she in? He's like, one on the right. Well, there's like 4 rooms on the right. I'm like, dude, I don't have time to deal with him and get this information out. So we run in, me and one other cop, we run in, check one room, not there. Go to the next one, we see her. Well, she's bedridden. Dude, she can't walk. And she's large.
Big lady.
Big 300, 400 pounds. Like it was, so I couldn't even see that. I couldn't see her. All I could hear is her voice because the smoke was getting super bad. So I stand her up, but she lost, I think, use of her legs for some other injury. So she falls straight to the ground. So now I can't get her up. Me and my buddy can't get her up. So we have to drag her. Well, in the city I worked, these houses, we're talking city. So they're narrow hallways. Every house is
straight up. Yeah. It's like 3 floors. Yeah.
So we're trying to drag her through this super small hallway. And it was taking a long time, So I remember we were taking breaks, running out of the house, getting air, and then coming back in to get her.
Is she conscious or unconscious?
She was in and out. But one of the crazy things that are always sticking in my mind, she had a little chihuahua. Dude, that thing was surfing on her back while we were pulling her.
Wouldn't
she was
leave
like
her.
Fucking, the thing's laying down looking at me as we're pulling this lady out of this fire.
Jesus.
Dude, I'm like, dude, when shit goes left, it goes way left.
Couldn't write this shit.
Right.
Man.
So we get her out and it took a while. Me and my buddy were in the hospital for smoke inhalation for, a couple hours. We get 1 day off and we're right back at it.
Right back onto the street.
But I remembered everything I'd been involved in, dude. I was just like, I'm just not going to think about it and just keep on going, keep pushing.
When I recorded After Dark episode number 49 with former Navy SEAL Jeff Nichols, admittedly, I didn't have a lot of intel on the guy. I just knew him as the real deal, specifically to strength and conditioning, and how he had carved out a path with it for his business that he operates with his wife called Performance First. Now, Performance First is all about preparing those that are interested in service for the selection process that they might be going through in whatever branch of service or government organization they might desire. In this particular clip, Jeff talks about purpose and answering and understanding your own why. Talk to us about Performance First. What is it that you and your wife are doing out there? Who is it that you're working with? Why is it that they're coming to you? You can start and finish wherever you want there, man.
Yeah, we again, this was Performance First as a name and an idea came from when I left my previous business. I had another gym here in town, and our target demographic was young athletes and whatnot. We got exposed to some veterans and working some of their rehab, but then we started getting people coming to the office asking like, hey, like, do you guys prepare people for buds? And I was like, no, we don't. Like it's nothing I ever really considered doing. But when
really, man, like never crossed your mind.
Because here's the thing, like, here's the truth. If we're being honest, when I got out, my head, I was only thinking someday I will be considered one of the best strength coaches in the pro world. And that was my only goal. I could be doing that real easily right now. And that's not a standpoint of ego, but there's plenty of job openings within the spec war world, within the pro athlete that I've either turned down or could take. Okay. And so in my head, I didn't want to be the ego. I didn't want to be attached to the New York Yankees, the Giants, and be their strength coach. I wanted to be the guy like a Pete Bomarito out of South Florida, where if you're the top college athletes in the world, that's where you go to train for NFL Combine. I wanted to be another version of that.
Gotcha.
And I wanted to do it in baseball and wrestling and mixed martial arts. That's what I wanted to do. And so for me, I had this big facility with all this staff and me coming in like a king and being a total piece of shit, really.
Sounds great. Great.
That's the reality. Is my thoughts of success were something really grandiose and awful. Now, certainly with the help of my wife, really, I can train people, but I can't make a viable business without my beautiful wife. It's just not possible. But my thing is our thing. We look at. I can now, without a whole lot of judgment, look back at the person that I was in 22, 23 years old when I came in, 24, 26, when I started getting experiences. I want to look back and I can very much recall the fire inside of me, that intuitive want to be like, man, the baseball thing didn't work out quite well, but I'm in position to make my way to the top tier, to be I got it, man. I was like fucking master breacher, lead man, point man for Red Squadron for a bit, for my fire team. Like I made it, man. I was there. I was catcher for the New York Yankees. Like,
right.
And with the job it is now, though, like I recognize that. I recognize people's deepest intuitive desire to serve. And you go like, well, it's like in the same, I say to guys, I joke, I go, you love your mom and dad, right? It's a reach. Some parents do it, kids don't. And like someone's like, yeah, I love my mom, whatever it is. I'm like, prove it. And they're like, totally, like, what do you mean? Like,
right.
In the same way, this same depth of conviction and the same truth, you want to serve. You can't even understand it. Like you're being compelled, like you're being drawn into this service. Like it's stronger than anything. So strong that you would self-destruct. So strong that you would give up family, give up a job, give up a profession. You'd walk away from a PhD opportunity to go serve. I did that. And I see people all the time walk through that door, which is the complete opposite of sport, right? You get 10 to 15% that are just hair on fire committed. 20 to 30% are pretty committed and high on talent. The rest are just talented. And that's not a disrespect. It's just the reality of what it is. Right. 95% of the people that walk through that door are just like me, angry, driven, and willing to sacrifice their own life to get what they want. And it's not a cliche, because the reality is there are people out there that would happily die for this country and its people, and I would do it 1,000,000 times over without regret, right? If there is such a human action. That's the people that walk through our doors, right? You and I both know intuitively, I mean, like we're sitting in this world in 2023 going, man, we could have done without 20, 21, 22. Not because there's not value in it, but we see the suffering.
I feel like I could have got value somewhere else in a different way, man. I always find that somewhere in what happens, right? It's not happening. What do they say? It's not happening to me. It's happening for me. And I'll take that for the years that you just mentioned. But at the same time, I feel like I could have learned some lessons in a different way.
So through all that suffering, right? And then you recognize that people can see the same suffering you do, but they see it at 23 like you did. And I say suffering, I mean, you know, when I came in, if you were to ask 23-year-old Jeff why you serve, I'd have been like, there's just something, it's something bigger than me. I'm like being called for this. But I really want to do it. You know, I want to serve. It wasn't a patriotic thing initially. Yes, I was a very proud American in that sense. You bet. I was raised in a very good way for my mother, Catholic. So I had a very sense of like onward Christian soldier idea about me too. And it's true. It was a very loving, truthful piece of who I am in my past. But I see it coming through my door. And I'm like, oh man, like you're going to get exactly what you're looking for, man. Just like I did. But so back to performance first, what do we do is, you know, like I look at the physical side and say, hey, there are some missing components, real basic stuff. Let's really understand some basic physiology with the push-up, the pull-up, the sit-up.
Right.
Because here, like we already said the name, like P. Bomberito, it's like if you need to have a better 40 or a better vertical, you're going to go to these individuals and they're going to teach you in the same way you see a basketball player go to the free throw line. No matter where they're at, the same dribble, breath, shot happens. The same
skills,
skill development, right? The same mindset development, the same we call skill acquisition and you know, and like flow state development. So I look at things and go, let's make sure we can do the basics first.
Peel back the layers of that onion. Yeah.
Then it becomes an evolution, right? And evolution evolves from the physical to some complex movements. But really what ends up happening is through this truthful, profound physical exertion that they've had prior to coming in here, and then they see me and they see my wife and they begin to have authentic engagement of conversation. And they realize like, oh my God, like my wife cracks them open. Is like, you see, this is all linked to your emotional state.
Different sense of awareness. Different sense of awareness.
Because here's the deal, man. Like we get so many guys coming from sport and we go, hey, how do you know, like, let's use baseball, off my background. How do we know that in baseball, the swing came together? Like we don't feel the ball when you hit the bat. Like, so what are you actually trying to chase? It's a reproduction of a physical movement that gives you a physical sense, gives you a feeling. A proper bench, someone that breaks the world record in the bench press, they're getting that feeling every rep they can in training.
Right.
Every rep in with the firearm, I know, like, you know, as soon as that trigger goes, right, and that slide goes, you're like, that 3 o'clock left, or, that right in the middle, man. How do we know?
You just know.
It's a feeling.
Right.
It is a rehearsed, dressed feeling that has value. And those
it can be measured.
Yeah.
All the other stuff can be measured. Yep.
Yes. And it's like, how do we know that's measured? Because that mechanical device that's linked to your arm is acting in repetition. So why is your bench press not acting in repetition? Because in the military, nobody does it better objectively learning. Like the special forces, hey, learn skydiving. Here's the objective rules. Don't screw it up, you die. Here's a demo. Don't screw it up or you're going to kill everyone. Here's the range, tap, rack, bang. Whatever it may be. It's like, here's your bench press. Here's your push-up. How is it that we put a man on the moon in 1969 and no one in our military knows how to do a biomechanic push-up? Why? Right? We can talk. You have people fucking till they're blue in the face talking ballistics.
All day long.
Are you 9mm versus 45? Well, you know what? Doesn't matter when you put it right there.
Yep.
The 22 rimfire works just as good as a 50 cal. I've seen it and I've done it. So
we're not practicing. We're not practicing the skills. It's not repetitive.
The podcast and reading a ton of books, right?
Right.
But we are not. Society has put so much value on the intellect.
Right.
And that's wrong. It's the intuition, right? We have got to take our intellect and drive it in the intuitive space.
So that they meet. Yes.
Yes. And where can we do that? We can't do that. Usain Bolt can't do that in the 4x1 finals. he's already in motion, right?
Right.
You can't fix somebody in a PST unless they've addressed it in training. And that, like, why do we go through all those immediate action drills in the range? So when it happens in real life, we react with a predictable, reliable method that works and can be taught.
Right. Or as they say, everything defaults to your lowest level of training.
Yes.
And if you have not practiced that repetitively to be prepared for whatever that situation is, plus all the other external inputs that are going to be happening at that particular time, depending on what your environment, your particular action environment is, you can expect to default to whatever the lowest level is. Now, I think this next guest, for anybody that's ever sat down with him or had a discussion with him, not knowing and wanting to kind of dig into some of the detail of the stuff that he talks about, maybe enter into that conversation with maybe a little bit of their guard up or having a little bit of an anxiety. Episode 53, I got the opportunity to sit down with Matt Pranka. Admittedly, I was a little bit nervous about this conversation because I didn't know where it was going to go or how it would go. I think the reality of that is what I really wanted to do is just get Matt in person and understand if the guy that I saw and heard, through the social media platforms was the same guy in person, and he did not disappoint. He is that guy. In this clip, we get into basically some of the things that most people have probably heard Matt say. I just think he had the ability in this particular platform to talk about it maybe in a little bit of a different way. One thing I really appreciate about Matt and how he handles himself is he's the same guy every time. He doesn't change his delivery, but if he has changed his mind, he'll admit that and he'll give you rationale as to why. In this particular clip, he makes a case, and I don't think it'll surprise you, but give it a listen. That's one of the challenging things about what we're talking about right now is because this deserves discussion, right? And people are going to start formulating opinions, or they're going to make up their mind without having gone down that path. And the medium in which the shooting, I'm going to use the word community here, and I want to come back to it. Yeah, but the community, again, in air quotes I'm using here, it's really tough because the medium is Instagram, right? And it's a short video. It's attention span issues, and there's very little context a lot of times, and there's no consideration for the background, where this came from, or even why that comment is being made, or for the reasons it may be relating to another comment somewhere. Where did you come into it in the comment section? All of that stuff. I think that's tough. I think the community, again, coming back to that in a second, needs to police that better. I think what I mean by that is they need to realize what the fuck is going on.
Yeah.
Right? And just chill for a sec.
So, there's a lot there to talk. So I just had this conversation with Ben Steger. We were teaching together, and you can put out an Instagram video that is, I try to put stuff out that's informative, right? With as much explanation as I can fit in, and I
do a 15-second reel or whatever.
Try to gauge it, like no one's going to read or the right guys are going to read the whole thing. So I experiment with different things, like, hey, I'll just put the words on the screen, little tidbits, and try to get guys to read the description. But you put out what I would think is, hey, this is good information, and it gets 500 likes. But you make a stupid video that, like Ben made, it's basically a troll video.
Okay, so define stupid.
Like
he's joking around.
It's obviously techniques that he is not advocating for.
Okay, gotcha. It's satirical.
It's 100% satire, right? It's a troll. And within 20 minutes, that thing has 3,900 likes and 1,000 shares.
Okay.
And that's where I think is very interesting about Instagram, where on one side, you're like, hey, the biggest thing for me when I got onto Instagram was I don't ever want to go anywhere where my shooting in real life looks different than what people see on the internet.
Okay.
Because I've seen that plenty. And so,
you mean it's not the highlight reel on the internet?
It's not the highlight reel. Like, hey, this is what training looks like. This is what my training looks like. This is where I'm at in terms of skill. Right? Because I think a lot of guys from the tactical world get skewed about what real training looks like. They all want to leave the range with a fist-sized group in their target.
But I'm gonna jump in here, Matt. I think some people would challenge that statement and go like, well, what is real training, Matt? What do you mean when you say that? Like, what does real training look like?
I think real training looks like a lot of failure.
Got you.
It looks like you're pushing hard, you're trying to develop. It looks like you're figuring things out. right? It's
And you're not being afraid to do that.
yeah,
Is that
you're
fair?
not being afraid to fail,
To push.
right? You're setting conditions where it's okay to fail, right? And then throughout that whole thing, like talk about the competitive side, you know, I view like matches is also training. You're putting it out there. Now you've created conditions where there's a little bit of stress. People are watching. It's going to be measured.
There's a clock.
It's going to be listed, right? Everyone can see it, right? That's a level of stress that a lot of guys in the tactical don't want to subject themselves to, because for me, it was an invaluable tool where it shows, hey, this is where I was at on this day at this time.
Okay.
And it gives you a
Measurable.
benchmark.
It's measurable.
And there's tons of metrics there for you to go off of.
Mm-hmm.
It'll tell you how many alphas you're getting, how many misses, how many penalties. And for me, it was always a good thing to gauge, to kind of drive my training, you know, from a competitive goals that I had. Hey, this is what you're not doing good. This is what you're doing good.
Gotcha.
And I think real training in the firearm side looks faster, more aggressive than any engagement, right? You make it that way so that you're used to you're kind of inoculated to operating at this level, right? And with that, though, comes a lot of failure. A lot of times the bullets don't go where you want them to go, and you have the work side of the training is now you have to develop foundational skills and fundamentals that you can do that pace. So, you know, when you play the game for real, the game is easier than the training ever was.
Okay, so that's what I heard you say there sounded different than what I may have thought I heard you say before. Not that you said something different, but I just didn't hear it in this way. And that is training at speed well beyond what the limits are, right? And how important that is with regard to what's going to happen in a real life situation based on the experiences. And I gotta say, I've had a lot of people sit in that chair, whether it was on air or even off air, that have told me about officer involved shootings that they've been in. And the first thing they say is when they there's a few things that are very common, and one of the things is everything slows down, right? They think they're moving slow.
Yeah.
And then when they go back and they watch footage or, you know, like body cam footage, whatever, the first thing that comes out of their mouth is that shit was fast. It happened so fast.
Yeah.
But it felt like everything goes into slow motion. And so when you're like brain mapping, right, and, you know, you're taking in all this effort and information in your training scenarios, you are laying down like this, basically this roadmap of how to get to the end so that you can, the end being, what is my action or my response to this going to be? So I can get in like the physiological side of what specific training will do. And so the match shooting starts to prepare you for that. It's not, so when I hear you say real, it's real training, but it's also real physiological stress. It's real emotional stress, which those are, and all that shit matters. All that shit matters when it comes down to what your ultimate performance is going to be. And so, yeah, I get like if you're gonna be in this, you know, and I hear people challenging, maybe you've done this, I don't know, but if you're going to challenge somebody that carries a gun for a living that may very well be in one of these situations, you need to get out, you need to push yourself. You should be in competition. You should be doing this. I don't think that's a wrong statement.
No, I don't. For me, it's not. And I think it's what's available now in terms of like to actually test yourself, right? Because you can go to the range, your own conditions. It's all favorable for you. Mm-hmm. And a lot of guys will perform at a really high level, right? And you take them out and just add a different element of stress, right? Because we can't really, if we're focusing on just shooting, you know, there's not a whole bunch of stresses. You know, historically, guys will say, hey, we're going to do this physical thing, and then that will mimic a stress.
Yeah, like you go do burpees and push-ups, and then, you know, get up and shoot.
Yeah, and I think for me, physical, like working out has never affected the shooting the way that like the stress of an actual fight affects it.
I think people are finally starting to get that. I mean, if I went back, like I say, a year on Instagram or whatever, I'm going to see people doing kettlebell swings and then picking up and then carrying ammo boxes across the range and then shooting again. And I'm not saying there's zero value to any of that, but the perceived value at the time was much different than I think it is now. I think that's kind of going away, at least I hope it is. But what you're saying is the acceptance to the stresses that you get from, say, match shooting have not fully been adopted yet. And this is where we're at with such an accessible thing for you to be able to go out and do.
Yeah.
Why are we fighting it?
It's easy. I mean, they fight it because it's
real.
Everyone's going to know.
Yeah.
Right.
Real.
If I don't ever have to shoot in those conditions, then I can be whatever I want to be.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Whatever I say is going to be gospel.
One of my favorite episodes of all time was the After Dark number 47 with John Norris, who was a retired game warden for the state of California. It started out as a game warden, and it turned into much more than that for John. His job evolved into being the leader for the Marijuana Enforcement Task Force for the state, specifically operating here in the Northern California, Silicon Valley area. And that might sound weird to people that don't know about John. That happened several years ago, but I think what this clip brings to the table is maybe an awareness of what was going on then, and helps you maybe make a little bit more of a compare and contrast to what's going on now with what we're looking at as a drug crisis in America, and how things are the same, but different, but the same in the end. Here's John Norris, episode 47. When did you recognize, how many times did it have to get crazy, the Wild Wild West, or when did you recognize that the drug cartels and the grows and the things were a problem that needed to be faced in a different type of way?
Yeah, it was going on a lot longer, way before I was made aware of it or my colleagues were. I know I ran across growers leaving the forest that looked like we assumed they were poaching animals and behind locked gates, and now they're on foot, say behind Mount Hamilton, and they were coming straight out of cartel grows. And this is, early 2000s, late 90s when I was back here at home. But in 2004, and I go into in the first book, War in the Woods, in the first chapter, I go into how I was immersed in a massive cartel grow through an informant. And that informant happened to be a guy I grew up with, fisheries biologist, really outdoor savvy, call sign GI in the book for a code name. And he's doing a master's thesis on threatened and endangered fish and frogs right below Coe Park, Pallisu Ridge. It's now Open Space Authority property, the old Pallisu Ranch. And he had been studying these creeks, Scott, for several years, and it's like April, and one of them is bone dry. And there's a bunch of plastic and visqueen and little pieces of debris all the way down this dry creek. And he calls me alarmed and goes, someone's got to be diverting the water up top, John, because the steelhead just migrated. All those fish are dead. There's not a living frog. This creek is dry and it shouldn't be, whereas the other tributary is fine. And that was one of those things where back in the day, you take an informant like that that's savvy, you throw him in the truck, you use him as a bird dog, you combine forces, we go check things out. And we did. We drove up the mountain, we dove into a canyon, no cell coverage, no phone coverage. And here me and GIR are going straight down a mountain, and we get into the most pristine canyon that looked like a little mini Grand Canyon side tributary, and beautiful. And we find the water source, and we find the pipe in it, and we find the visqueen plastic, and we find the diversion, which at the time, I didn't know that was the main MO, the main method that these cartels use to divert a good, pristine waterway. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And we followed the water line down, and it led to, 20-inch, 2-foot immature marijuana plants. And then we could see an encampment. And now all of a sudden we're seeing growers, and they've got AK-47s and they've got machetes, and they're showing situational awareness as they're tending their grow silently. And they have
And here you are. Yeah. What, a sidearm and a civilian?
I've got my sidearm, I've got an AR, and I've got an unarmed civilian. Yeah. And I've got no radio coverage, no cell coverage. And here we are literally in my backyard where I grew up. And these guys do not look like the people you would expect to see in our woods. Public, private, park, or anything. It was like, we are not in Kansas anymore, Toto. This is crazy. So we fortunately didn't get detected that day. We stayed hidden. We let them move out. We busted tail and got up that mountain as fast as we could without tapping out. And, my mind is spinning now. I got to get a hold of some agency guys, whoever works this type of stuff. And that's when I was immersed in meeting guys from Santa Clara County Sheriff's Office, the marijuana eradication team guys that would later become, brothers and sister partners. And we'd form an alliance, and just, everything that led to our agency team much later was largely because of the relationship we built with Santa Clara Sheriff's Office. And when I saw that grow, it just blew my mind, because I had never seen so many impacts to such a sensitive creek. It's so hidden, nobody ever finds it. You know, it's one thing if like a tech company comes in and develops against the Guadalupe River illegally and they push a bunch of silt in it and a bunch of endangered species are threatened. You can't hide that. That's going to be a high profile case. We're going to, you know, involve other agencies.
Right.
And I worked a ton of those on the environmental crime kind of urbanization in Santa Clara County. The stream alteration violations were off the hook all the time in this county. But when you get something insidious like that, brother, that's so far up in the backcountry that no one's ever going to see it, and they're not going to really maybe see the damage it's causing downstream. And then understanding, and we had no idea at the time, because this was the first exposure, but we didn't know they were using the EPA banned poisons,
Right.
the toxic carbofuran, the metaphos, all these different Q-furan, all these trade names of an insecticide that's so deadly, the EPA banned it from use in America 20 years ago. Because even when you take a 12, you know, like a 12-ounce bottle of like crystalline powder of carbofuran, it's a very potent insecticide. It's made to keep everything off the plant for agriculture.
Mm-hmm.
And it's made to be diluted with 5,000-6,000 gallons of water. And these cartel guys are putting them in 3 to 5 gallon backpack sprayers, and they're spraying this stuff unprotected.
Everywhere.
And it's on the plants, it's on the flour that's going to the black market for consumers, whether they're kids, medicinal users on the East Coast, Midwest, wherever, other parts of California. And it's getting into the water and it's in the soil. And what people don't realize, a couple tablespoons of that stuff just in a small creek can kill 2 to 5 miles of everything living in that creek.
Mm-hmm.
That's how nasty this stuff is. I mean, one of the active ingredients is a nerve agent that the Nazis developed for their bioweapons program way back in World War II. So EPA said, no way, but that's America. It's felony to use it and possess it here.
Bad guys don't care about that.
Bad guys don't care, right, brother? And they can get it in Mexico and Tijuana. The African poachers, which is, and this is so sinister as well, but it kind of goes hand in hand with the greed and anything for profit at the expense of pristine wildlife. Elephant and rhino poachers in Africa, right? You hear those stories of the Kenya Rangers getting in gunfights, and it's a full battleground to stop these rhino poachers of killing off rhinos and elephants and any ivory type animals. But they're now using that in water sources so they can poison, you know, 1.5 ton, 2 ton rhino and never fire a shot.
Never know, yeah.
And be detected. So the rhino poachers are using the same tactic the cartels are using, because that stuff's out in the third world market. And that's starting to become a big awareness, kind of a hot button issue that environmentalists are starting to look at as I start to talk to other countries on the negative effects of these poisons and how we've seen it firsthand on the cartel front.
It's disgusting. It maddens me. It unnerves me to think about,
right?
You know, just the not caring. Again, criminals and bad guys don't care. They only care about profit. I bet you're talking about one spot where 3 to 5 miles downstream, you've now wrecked everything. What's the reality of these types of things that are happening just in the state of California? I mean, how many estimated illegal grows are happening around this time that you're figuring all this out?
5,000-6,000,
It's nuts.
maybe more. You know, I would say that was conservative. And this was back in 2004. And we want to kind of give a history lesson a little bit. And there's been such a changing dynamic in cartel trends,
Right.
especially since regulation. Prop 64 changed the game. And it didn't change it for the better. It just shifted focus of where the cartels went. And I'll get into kind of all that so it makes sense. And we do cover that, you know, in the second edition that's about to drop January 16th, just so everybody knows, is the second trade paperback, the second version of Hidden War drops, because we have about 50 copies left of the first edition hardcover that you have. And one thing I did in the new introduction is update on, well, what's happened since the first book was published 4 years ago, right? When I retired. And it's been it's just been crazy. We want to look at Prop 64. We're now 5 years in of regulated cannabis in California. Voters were sold a bill of goods that basically said, hey, this is going to stop the black market. This is going to put a bunch of money into cannabis education for kids. It's going to fund agencies, which it did. Granted, we are getting a lot of money. My old teammates are getting funds now from some taxation for equipment and overtime. But the worst thing that it did, though, that kind of negates all those benefits is it incentivized the cartels to just go full speed.
Right.
And they don't have to go deep in the woods anymore. They can do it on private land in hoop houses anywhere. Because whether you have 7,000 plants or 7,000 plants illegally, unregulated, unregistered, it's a misdemeanor.
Right.
And
Nobody's going to jail for this or getting a ticket at worst.
Exactly, Scott. You know, one of the things as a team leader for MET that I did was numerous presentations to legislatures, to governor's staff, to NGOs, to conservation groups, preservation groups, animal rights groups, everybody, even grower groups.
Anybody that would listen.
Anybody that would listen. And a lot of people were concerned because we are the weed state of the world, right? We're one of only 6 true Mediterranean climates on the globe here in California. Mm-hmm. So we, like wine in Napa Valley.
You're going to grow weed. This is a great place to grow it.
Yeah. Yep. We grow great cannabis here in the Golden State. And I kind of look at it like, well, if we're going to regulate, great, just regulate properly. You know, do it so that you're not harming the environment. Do it so you're not putting our public, at risk. Put it so you're not undermining a legitimate grow operation that's put hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars into organic product, registered sale, not playing on the black market, trying to do what this law was.
Sounds reasonable.
Sounds reasonable. Right. Well, greed, money, special interest, whatever you want to call it, kind of put that whole objective, made it a failure and kind of kicked it right out the door. So now what I talk about, especially in the second edition, is we're 5 years deep. When I retired, we had been about a year and a half in Prop 64. We were already seeing it fail. But what's happened after 5 years? And now we talk about some documentaries, and I just teamed up with Jorge Ventura from the Daily Caller. And I helped him co-host a second documentary he did. He did 2 really good ones, one down in Southern California, the northern deserts there, Palmdale, all that area, and just the cartels taking over those massive hoop houses. And they're not hidden. They're in the desert.
Right in plain sight. Yeah.
But all the same carbofuran poisons, the human trafficking going on, other cartel crimes, water stealing at massive amounts, like almost 7 million gallons of water a day just being stolen every day down there for those illegal grows in Riverside, San Bernardino, and LA County a day.
If you live in California, this has to be like, well, what?
Yeah.
Like that much water, especially like living in the Bay Area and what's happened with our water here.
Our drought, right?
And our water prices and whatnot. Yeah. To think that somebody's stealing that and getting it for free, also equally as maddening.
Yeah, it's blasphemy. I mean, it's such hypocrisy that we're on, drought restrictions, yet we're still facilitating and actually incentivizing these groups that steal more water than anything, threatening California water. And it's not just California, it's other states that are seeing this too.